The art for today's video is not about the podcast that I will be recommending. And as always, Daryl recommends podcasts as a podcast recommending series, and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
Not long ago, in a distant land, there lived a warrior of great and noble deeds. He wished to rule the people of his city as their king. But his friends didn't think it was a good idea, so they killed him. That's right, isn't it?
Broadly.
I don't want to get the facts wrong.
Don't worry about those. Just tell me the story.
All right. Well, they ran away, the killers, I mean, to the plains of Philippi. There they raised an army. They knew they'd soon be followed, for two men sought revenge against their crime. Two men forged in opposites. The first strong of muscle, the second strong of mind, united in common.
After the death of Julius Caesar, Mark Antony and Gaius Octavius Caesar are ready to lead Rome into a new future. Unfortunately, Rome is dirt poor, and with its army breathing down both of their necks, Mark and Gaius must look towards other means to pay them. A surprise visit from Cleopatra might be what saves the both of them, but will they be able to before everything collapses around them? Cry Havoc, Ask Questions Later is a historical comedy podcast set in Rome, where the men bicker and the women get things done. Cry Havoc is created by David K. Barnes of Wooden Overcoats and is produced by Rusty Quill. So this show is really funny. I have not recommended a historical comedy podcast before. I think the closest thing would be Old Gods of Appalachia, except it's on the scale of things I normally recommend, which is where horrible things happen to people who either do or don't deserve it, because I love my horror podcasts. This one I liked. I started listening to it when it came out, just because Rusty Quill has been coming out with some good shows, and this is one I wanted to try, and I liked it. Wooden Overcoats is a show that I've been wanting to get into, I just haven't gotten around to listening to it yet, but I plan on doing that someday. Just not at the moment. But it's a silly show. Cry Havoc is a very silly show. I used to be super into Fallout. If people who have followed me long enough remember my Fallout days, me and some of my Fallout friends would go and make Legion OCs and develop our Legion OCs because it's an incredibly underwritten faction. And this kind of gives me the vibes of that. Because obviously, the Legion in Fallout is based off of Rome, because some idiot decided to watch Roman movies and decide to make a whole horrible group based off of that. But yeah, no, then just like listening to this show, it's like I kind of miss my Fallout days. This does not mean I'm going back to drawing a bunch of Fallout fan art though. And I just like the show just for it being like silly. All the characters are fun to have on screen. I like comedy shows where the characters aren't too overly annoying, which is like, at least in like mainstream media, to me it's a lot. Not every show I've watched, but a lot of comedies I've watched, it's kind of like that. All these characters who come up, even some of the ones that the other characters find annoying, aren't like super like too much. I think that's the best way to put it. They're not too much. This is also nice too. There's only like one romance in the show, but it's like a sapphic one, which I'm like, yes, because we need more shows, and podcasts especially. I need more podcasts in my life where the romances are sapphic based, because I want my sapphic romances. The plot's like really engaging. I'm like very invested. I was very invested with the previous arc that they just finished up in the episode that came out when I recorded this, which was episode 12. I really liked that arc, and I like all the other ones that previously with it. These characters are just really fun to like just watch them do things, and they're just so silly. They're so silly. Nobody feels like an idiot, but nobody feels like a complete mastermind either, even with some of the characters who were like super smart and super cunning and super like, oh, I'm just like having these people wrapped around my fingers, but they still do and make stupid mistakes, and I just like that about it. It's like everybody is various levels of dumb, and some people are just dumber than others. and it's nice. I think Octavia and Charmaine are my favorite characters in this, just because I love them. They're great. And I like the whole bit where it's just like, it's about like Gaius and Mark and Cleopatra's whole issues with running the Roman government, trying to make negotiations to pay their soldiers, having issues with that because they don't want to meet Cleopatra's demands, and Cleopatra's trying to figure out what she wants to get from both of these guys, and and just all that. But then also going back to like this other subplot with Octavia and her theater and trying to do her theater stuff while on top of like technically being considered like royalty, and I just like it. It's like a nice little show. I think they only said there's gonna be 20 episodes of it, so if you want something that's like nice and bite-sized, if you're not like somebody who could listen to a lot of episodes of something, it's a nice bite-sized show. It's a very good, like, nice little bite-sized show. Just like something to nibble on. Like, the content warning wise, like, I mean, like, even for a show that's set in Rome, it's not like super, it's like, there's like, I think there's a gladiator scene. I don't remember off the top of my head if something like super like graphic happens in that, but that's like one episode. Otherwise, I would say like the biggest thing that could probably squick people out is that there's like anything bad is obviously tagged as content warnings in the show notes, but like it does have a lot of like suggestive language. There's a lot of like fade to black sexual scenarios. Well, actually, there's not a lot. There's like a couple, but you know, if you're not into that, then that's there. But it's not like Game of Thrones. There you go. That's like the bar is literally on the floor. It's not like Game of Thrones. And yeah, I love this as a comedy. All the voice actors are really good. And I think one of the things that it does is it does like it does one common comedy trope that I normally hate because it always goes into a certain route that makes me hate it. And it's like a misunderstanding, keeping secrets kind of route when it comes to like some comedy stuff, but it doesn't do the thing about that certain trope that I hate about it. I don't want to like talk about it because it does get into some spoilery stuff, and I know a lot of people like going into it blind, but it does involve the like the sapphic romance I was talking about. Yes. Good. Yes. I'm glad I didn't do that because I was super worried about it. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And everybody's fun to listen to, and I just don't have any issues with like characters being on screen. I normally don't with a lot of podcasts. Sometimes I do. I think sometimes I do with some shows, but it's mostly because I end up hating the character. This show doesn't have that though. And so yeah, if you like a historical comedy, if you want like a show that's set in like, you know, in a historic piece, that's not super accurate, but you know, whatever. And you want like a Roman setting that isn't like a huge over masculine Roman worshipping story. Moreover, it kind of makes fun of the whole like macho manly, like, oh, Rome was this like superior macho man society that like pokes fun at that. This is like a good show. This is a good show. And it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it if you want like a nice little bite-sized comedy. With that being said, I am going to be linking down to all the relevant websites like Patreon. I know Rusty Quill has a Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and link David's socials as well. I don't know if he has a website, but if he does, that will be found in the description below. If not, I'm probably going to be linking to his Twitter. And if you have any suggestions for shows that you would like me to listen to, I gladly will listen to them. You just have to drop them down for me to listen to it. Give me the titles, gosh darn it, and maybe it'll move up on down on my list. I have like I have a list of shows now. I made a list of shows that I have listened to that I will be recommending. So like it's in order, so I know what I'm going to be recommending next, as well as shows that I'm currently listening to, planning on re-listening to, and I can add more to it. I have so much in my bookmarks. If your suggestion's already in my bookmarks, it might go up on the list. Who knows? Never know unless you ask. And I have my socials linked down below. I am on Blue Sky now, so you can follow me over there instead of on what was once Twitter but is now not Twitter but still to me is Twitter. Yeah, do that. Do that. I prefer that. Anyway, goodbye, and I'll talk to all of you later.